Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the April Finance and Budget Subcommittee meeting of the Washington County Quorum Court to order. I welcome everybody here this evening. It's good to see everybody on such a beautiful day. With that, I've asked Justice Dennis to do us the prayer and pledge this evening. Justice Dennis.
Thank you. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you at this time. We just ask that you would be with all of us and just bless us with wisdom and discernment as we look at different issues tonight. Pray that you'll help guide us. Dear Lord, pray that you'll be with our country and all the shootings that we've had, and pray that you would be with the people and help heal their hearts and their minds so that these things don't occur. Pray that you just guide and direct us, forgive us of our sins. These things we ask and pray in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Justice Dennis. Now we'll move to the adoption of the agenda tonight. Are there any additions or amendments to the agenda? Justice Ecke?
Yes, Judge, I'd like to make an amendment to the agenda. I'd like to remove from the consent agenda item number 11, that is from the collectors. I believe it's still the number 11. And we're going to move that to next month, so we're just going to remove that from the agenda.
Okay.
Okay. And then I'd like to add the ordinance 2023, the sweep that we do I'd like to add it to the agenda.
Okay, I have a motion to postpone item number 11 to the May Finance and Budget Committee meeting by Justice Ecke.
Second.
Second by Justice Dean. All those in favor?
Point of order or whatever. Why are we moving it? Did she ask for it to be moved? The collector?
Justice Ecke?
Yes.
So we have a motion to postpone item number 11 to the May Finance and Budget Committee meeting by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Dennis. All those in favor? Those opposed? That will move to the May meeting. And then we also had a motion by Justice Ecke to add item number 23-0-062, the sweep ordinance by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Dennis. All those in favor? Those opposed? I'll make that new item number 25. Additional amendments. With that, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Dennis. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? The agenda is adopted. With that, we'll move into our monthly reports. Treasurer Hill.
Right into 4.1. Fairly quiet, uneventful month for March. The prosecutor just said that wasn't necessarily a bad thing, and I do agree. But 1,000 general, 2,000 road. Expenses came in a little over where the revenue was. 3017 jail. It was the opposite. Revenues came in over expenditures. If you look at 4,800 radio sales tax, we did spend $2.3 million on Motorola radios and equipment. So we're getting that balance down. The end of this report, we began the month with 97,000, ended with 90, I hope not, 97 million, and ended with 92 million. 4.2 ARPA report. Not a whole lot happening in March. We finished out that contract for Northwest Arkansas Economic Development, $25,000. Paid some for the ARPA administrator, and that was about it. Still have 15.4 million cash balance. 4.3. 1 cent sales tax, 816,000 came in. It's almost 11% over the same period last year. 4.4, the jail tax, and all the sales taxes are for January collections. But the jail tax brought in 1.2 million. For the first 3 months, they're already 320,000 ahead of this same time last year. 4.5, the half-cent road tax did very well, 18% over last year. 191,000 came in. That's all I have.
Questions for Treasurer Hill? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, we'll do the employees' insurance report. Mr. Angel?
Good evening. Well, last month, my job was a little easier than this month. We delivered good news on the prior month and current month. We'll start with the cash flow, which, as usual, stays about a month behind. The good news on that, if you look to the very bottom green numbers in 2023 over 2022, we're running over $65,000 a month less than we were in 2022, which is always good news. But as discussed last month, when I see a couple, 3 good months in a row, we realize insurance is a very cyclical thing. We can't control claims. We're going to have a bad month. So the spoiler to go to what's really important, which is the bottom line on how much we spent in March, we did have that bad month. You won't see it until next month's cash flow. It's not on here, but if you move to the next page, the employee insurance statement, you'll see that total expenditures for the plan were a little over $800,000. What that means to the bottom line is we were a little over $3.4 million in our reserve account. That dropped us a little over $400,000. We still stayed over that $3 million mark. As we've discussed, most months we try to keep that reserve account between $3 and $3.5 million. We took a hit in March, and that will be shown on the cash flow that we bring next month. But just to prepare you guys for that, it was a tough month. You can see the RX expenditures on that were a little over double. So we hope that was a one-time drug like hepatitis or something like that, since it was just one big spike. So hopefully that drops back down, but we'll know more once everything files through and we get the details on that.
Questions for Mr. Angel? Justice Simons?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Angel, I was just kind of going to ask what you, I believe, answered. Is there any lead indicator consistency across the board that might have driven those prices up that we could somehow mitigate, or is this just kind of a blip on the radar of a bad month?
We sure hope it's a blip. But, you know, if you look at these things over any self-funded group of this size, Washington County is a very large employer. So, you know, you're going to have folks that have procedures get done, that have these high-dollar injectables on the pharmaceutical side. So since both those numbers spiked, we don't have the complete claims audit in. That takes a little more into the month to get, but complete guess. But looking at the numbers and doing a lot of these type accounts, you know, hopefully this is just one of those spike months and we get back down in April to a month like we've been used to.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any more questions for Mr. Angel? Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Judge.
Item number 6, we'll move to the Comptroller's report. Comptroller Story.
Good evening. Let's see, the first thing we have here at 6.1 is unappropriated reserve balance report. It's reflecting the ordinances from last month that had a numerical effect to the budgets. And you notice on line 49 and on line 52 or 51 are the only 2 items for the month. And so it was kind of a light month also with respect to changes in the unappropriated reserves. So everything is looking quite well from my perspective on what I'm seeing on those. If you go to the next report, which is 6.2, I believe. Yes, it is. statement summary of operations. You'll notice up in the blue column, rows 1 through 8 is, as I explained last time, is a good synopsis or summary of the information that's replicated in the next 4 pages. Basically, we're 25% through the year. And if you look at row 1, column K, so we've completed 25% of the year. The next row, row 2, you'll see over an item, column J, 33% would be reflective of the next month being added to it. And you'll see that all of our numbers are falling below the 25% being expended in column K. And in column J, you'll see that pretty much we're staying within line within what if everything was expended in the following month, which is not always the case because you have encumbrances that are spaced out by the month. So the encumbrances in some cases are multiple months out, but we're still very close to the 33% if we were to presume that all of those encumbrances would clear in the next month. If you look at row 7, you'll see that all funds grand total for the period so far is only 19% relative to 25% based on just an average across all the months. And it's 33% when you add encumbrances in column J, row 7. So everything is looking pretty nice relative to that. I did an extra little bit of looking at that, and you'll notice there's no row 6 on this spreadsheet. I'll be adding that this next month. It picks up, in effect, all of the other non-general funds and the other, and excluding road fund and jail fund. Because if you look at column K, you see that we're 25% through the year, but all of the other percentages are slightly less than that, and yet for the whole period with all funds, we're at only 19%. So something's going on with those other funds, which is positive, but that row 6 that I'm going to add this next month will be, as far as this month is concerned, it's only consuming 12% of its budget so far for the non-big funds, I'll say, okay? So that's just something that I noted as I was reviewing the information and thought I'd bring that to your attention. If you look down column K, you can see that there are a few funds that are a little above an average, the 25% average for this month. And I'll bring one to your attention, for instance, is row 13, Building and Grounds. They're at 35% of their budget for the year versus the average 25%. And I talked with the director there, and he indicated, as I expected, that with Building and Grounds, you've got to get a lot of things prepped for the summer to get done for infrastructure changes, maintenance, things like that. Also, he is a little front-loaded on his insurances, like fire insurance, where he's getting a better rate by paying sooner. So that's what's, in effect, going to average out as we move through the year. But that's just to kind of give you an idea of how this kind of works, because there's no, the best number we can get is to kind of look at an average across all months, and that's where we are at 25% of the year through March 31. Wasn't anything else that I noted at the moment. I've got a couple other things that I'm going to investigate to see if there's a way we can reduce cost that was brought to my attention just because of these percentage numbers. That I like this report, in that it helps me to get a kind of an above-the-trees look at what's going on in all the areas, and the numbers can kind of bring me to a question or two that I drill down a little deeper, that y'all obviously don't have the time to do, but it helps me to manage the numbers a little closer than the volume that we have that we're trying to deal with. So I appreciate that opportunity to do that. I believe that unless y'all have any other questions, that's all that I have for this report.
Questions for the comptroller? Justice Coger.
Well, excuse me, I had a question about the ambulance service, but I seem to have lost it. I think it was Fund 301. I can't find it now. 24? Okay. Could you explain that one? I think it was 102%, it said? No?
Oh, 102% for the year.
Uh-huh.
I don't know that I got to that one to be looking at it, but I certainly agree with you. It's over budget. And I'm not aware at the moment, but I'll be glad to get you that information.
Maybe the county judge might know. Do we have a contract for the ambulance service? Is that correct?
We do have a contract with the ambulance service. I'm
So-
wondering if there's not an anomaly in our equation there or something, because if you look at column K, that looks correct, but column J is way off. So I'm wondering if there might be an issue in the equation there. We pay Central EMS monthly for our contract, and that number is the $70,383. So the fact that column K is 25% completely makes sense to me. I cannot speak to the 102% demonstrated in column J.
And I certainly do agree with you on that. That missed my attention. And with the encumbrances, let's see. Yeah, there seems to be something wrong there in terms of maybe a math error. Normally Excel will call that to your attention if there is, but I'll certainly investigate that for you.
I appreciate that. And you said that we didn't have time, but I have lots of time, so I'm happy to look at any of that with you.
I certainly thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to.
Additional questions for Comptroller Story? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We appreciate you. With that, item number 7, discussion and overview of the Washington County Salary Administration Program and role of the Quorum Court. What I wanted to do is invite our HR Director, Director Burchett, up this evening and just kind of give you guys an overview of what we have going on, and give you maybe a little bit of 30,000 feet above our Salary Administration Program. So with that, Director Burchett.
Hi, good evening, and thank you for having me here tonight. We as Washington County and employees have went through many adjustments since the passing of this year's salary structure, and as a result of those adjustments, the county judge's office wanted to make sure that you as the governing body of the Quorum Court first understands the current policies and processes that are in place, and second, understand what your role is in the salary administration process. Those of you that were on the Quorum Court last year may remember a discussion about having a market study or organizational evaluation done on our program and positions. The county judge's office at this time, or at the time, did have this done by a third-party administrator, And the results were very telling in that we, as the county, have some areas that we have to work on before a clear picture can be provided from a market analysis. HR is currently working on some internal housekeeping based on the recommendations of last year's study. This includes working with the elected officials to determine appropriate content within job descriptions as well as their own organizational structure within their department. Once this portion of the work is done, we will be able to seek out the services we require to accomplish an up-to-date market analysis. Now we are going to go into an explanation about our current pay policies and those procedures. We currently have 4 types of increases allowed in our salary administration policy, all with varying degrees of requirements. For each of these requested increases, all elected officials or department heads making the request are first required to provide HR with a justification letter, and in some cases, the revised job description for the position in question. From there, HR, in conjunction with the comptroller's office, coordinates the agendas that the request needs to go through and ensures that if there is a cost, that the budget calculations are provided. I provided all of you with visuals, which are also going to be displayed on the screen. We're going to go ahead and start with hiring rate process. All employees shall be hired at the minimum rate of the grade range. So this is per policy. An individual can be hired to the first quartile of the pay range with justification and JSAP approval. The money has to be budgeted or there's additional approval needed from a hire committee in the quorum court. There is a limit to 120 calendar days after the date of hire that this type of adjustment can be made. If the elected official or department head is at risk of losing their new hire, they can offer up to the first quartile or higher pending additional approval. Does anybody have any questions about hiring process? Okay. Merit increases, an annual evaluation.
Director Burchett.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think we're going to have to slow down just a little bit.
Okay. I'm sorry.
This is a lot for them to digest.
Okay.
It's a lot for me to digest, and I've been
Okay.
trying to work on this with the quorum court for 4 years and in my current role. So I want you guys to feel free to ask questions. Let me just tee this up by saying our salary administration program is really, really complex. And I think it's that way by nature. But I want you guys to try to, we don't want to overwhelm you tonight, but we're trying to give you some sense of especially the new members of how this works so you can get some idea of it. So maybe just back up and give us the bullet points of that one more time of a new hire coming in.
Okay. So new hire rates. It states all full-time employees shall be hired at the minimum rate of the pay grade range. So all of you have in front of you are pay grades, our pay structure that was passed for 2023. So if a position is classified, whatever range they're in, if they're hired in, typically based on policy, they're going to come in at the minimum. However, it goes on to allow for accommodations to the elected official or hiring manager in order to not lose a qualified candidate. So an individual can be hired at the first quartile, which you can see that on each of the grades shown, what the first quartile is. That does require a justification letter. That justification letter accompanies any financials. If there is a need for additional financials in that department's budget, it will accompany that through JSAP and all the other committees up through the quorum court, in addition to that ordinance that gets drafted. The type of justification that's required for that is stuff such as prior experience in the county, prior experience based on the job description and its essential duties that are listed. So the elected official is the one who really distinguishes that and determines what route they would like to go if they need to ask for more money to accommodate that hiring in that situation. I did put in here the 120-day limit. I want everybody to understand that hiring, new hiring rates is essentially what it is. It's for a new hire. So I think that 120-day limit, calendar day limit, was probably added into our current policy to give time to get through committees is really what I believe that was done for. And that makes sense to me because sometimes it does take a little while to get through the process. Our policy for new hires goes into saying also that if an elected or department head is at risk of losing that new hire, they can offer up to the first quartile, but that's pending approval. So they can't just say, oh, I'm automatically going to give it to you, but in their offer letter they give that employee, they put in their language that says, you're going to come in at the minimum, we will retro pay you back to your hire date pending this approval from committees and quorum court. Does all that make sense, that process?
We had an example of that, not to pick on him, but if you guys remember the first few weeks here, Comptroller Story came in under that kind of an example. We recruited Comptroller Story. We are prohibited to hiring above the minimum, but we felt with his qualifications, you guys partnered with us and brought him out of the first course. I'm just using that as an example so you can, source back to something, actions we've already taken as a quorum court. Can we stop there just a second for some questions? Justice Fleming, did you have a question?
I was basically gonna say kind of what you said, but I think so far, everybody that's been hired has been through the quorum court and asked for more money before we actually hire them. So then we're gonna go back and give them back the money after they're here 36, you're saying 120 days? So if you hire them down 120 days from now, you give them a raise, so you're gonna go back and pay them plumb from the 120 days forward? Or are you gonna pay them from 120 days on?
It depends on what's put forth before the quorum court in the justification letter. Is that, I think I understand what you're asking me. If they're gonna be paid that new rate
Well, I mean,
after 120 days?
If the elected official says we're gonna hire you at this rate, I know the quorum court will pass it. That's in their mind, they're saying that. So if we don't pass it, they don't get it, but in their mind, if we retrofit everybody that we hire, why don't you just hire them in at that pay?
Well, you can't
Well, I
because it's not
understand you can't,
budgeted.
I understand
Yeah.
that, but every time we've hired somebody since the first of the year, we've done this. It's been through this court every time.
Right, right,
And, okay.
yeah. I mean, that's what the policy says. This is just to educate you on what the policy says and to kind of give you applicable reasoning, I guess, behind what you all are seeing come before you when it comes to personnel changes and requests.
And I would say, just to add on that, yes, traditionally, when we hire in that situation, we do make it retroactive. There's nothing in the policy that says it has to be done one way or the other, but I think the elected official usually always defaults to that because you understand the risk involved. That if we were to hire somebody like that, dependent, and then for some reason the funding wasn't there, it exposes us as elected officials in the county for sure. Justice Simons?
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Burchett, when we're determining grades, is it job title, job description? I know that was a point of contention last year. Not quite sure where we landed on that.
Okay, it's both.
Is that, okay?
It's both.
Both. Market-driven, is it decided by you, by?
Market-driven is driven by the market. So whatever your market umbrella is that you're looking at. So, and that could be, for example, like we did Benton County.
Sure.
We could be using that as our market comparison, or it could be like a national market survey that we're looking at. So it depends on what your market region is that you're comparing to.
So currently, right now, we're using Benton County with the hopes of cleaning some of this up and then
We use that.
doing more of the third party.
We use that to compare to get our salaries where they're at now, okay? That's not what we're doing, like,
For new hires.
I mean, because it's passed. I mean, so what you have in front of you is what was passed based on Benton County. So yes, for new hires, if they come in and they're classified in whatever grade they're in, that's what grade they're in.
Yeah.
And that was prepared based off of those Benton County market comparison.
But the hope is moving forward, we would have this market survey that gives us a little bit more
A little bit
details moving
more
forward.
details, more meat in the game, yeah.
Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
Continue, okay. All right, merit increases. merit increases, an annual evaluation process that all full-time employees will go through in order to determine a merit increase eligibility amount. Some of the guidelines for this are performance evaluations must be submitted to HR office by November 15th of each year to be considered. The quorum court will approve the adjustment annually with budget, and no increases may take an employee over their maximum of their pay range. Limit to increases is capped at 5% annually for merit or another percentage determined by the quorum court. HR's role in this process is to verify the completeness of the information, determine the availability of salary budget funds, and the relationship of the merit request as to the current criteria and policies. This type of increase has not been one that has been utilized from what I understand in the past. I can say that from my experience, there is not consistency with completion of annual employee evaluations, nor are they provided to HR by November 15th of each year. Based on this, I can understand why merit increases have never been the focus of the county. However, there are some recommendations that I believe could help in this process, but I believe that that is a conversation for another time. Does anybody have questions about the merit increase process as it currently sits in the handbook?
Justice Fleming?
So are you saying we need to get that figured out before we go handing out merit raises?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
So we need to halt merit raises until we get that done?
Well, we haven't been doing merit raises
Okay.
at all.
Well, I've heard, this last year's salary and all that, I've heard merits, I've heard this and I've heard that, and I heard they got this for that, so did they or did they not base a little bit of that on merits last year?
No, there were not merit raises included in that salary proposal last year.
So I guess we need to come up with some kind of plan on that.
Yeah, I think what I take from Director Burchett here is that that merit program or that merit track or whatever you want to call it is always something the county wanted to make viable. I think the problems are, and I think we're going to see that through a lot of we just have some housekeeping issues that we need to do. And one of them is, I think, Director Burchett, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we have a standard evaluation form that we're using in the county, if that's correct, right?
That is correct.
And so I would think that would be square one if that's where we need to develop some sort of.
We need an objective policy and process for this in order to apply it to pay. Right now, our policy is very subjective, and so there's not really a guideline as to if your improvement on your performance rating form, if you get high marks, there's no numerical percentage value that ties to that. There's lots of different ways that you can do a merit program, but I think that, in my mind, what would work best is for there to be those guidelines for all electeds and all employees to fall within, so they understand, like, this is what is going to be, the outcome if I get a positive annual evaluation. That ties to some type of numerical or expected numerical value. Ultimately, of course, through budget, the quorum court would have the power to say, well, for whatever reasons, we need everybody to lower their expected merit, by whatever percentage across the board because of fiscal constraints or whatever it may be. That power still does lay with the quorum court. But what I mean by having a merit program where it has like a grading rubric, it allows the elected and the hiring official and the employee, when they sit down to review that employee's performance, for that employee to also see, okay, look, I did really great. Now I can see where my pay is actually going to be impacted by my performance. Whereas right now, we don't really have that in place. Like I said, it's a very subjective process. They may do their evaluation, but they don't see, I guess, the fruits of their labors, I guess the way to look at that, because there's no numerical dollar figure that's tied to that right now, because the county has never really used the merit process to give pay to its employees. We've done promotional type increases, we've done that, and some other types, but never truly merit.
And I think the date of November 15th being used shows how antiquated that thought process is, because traditionally, the last few years, we've been moving through the budget prior to November 15th. So it's just something we might want to, and then let me, because once again, this stuff's all very complicated to me. Merit, you look at it per the individual. That's right?
That's correct.
That's the mechanism to give an individual a raise. And anything in my history that we've done on the quorum court, we've always moved like everybody in one big group with the adjustments that we've done. So that's why we think it's important that we develop and get perfected some sort of mechanism to reward the individual.
Correct. Moving everybody at once is not a bad thing. As you will see in what I provided you, there is something called a cost of living, which is a COLA. And we did talk about that quite a bit last year. That is a very specific type of increase, and I did define it based on the market standard definition for you. And that is usually carried out during budget, and that is the quorum court's decision on what that COLA amount would be from year to year. But that is totally separate from a merit or a hiring increase or anything like that. Very different types of increases. Okay. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. Promotional increases. An increase for an employee given that their classification has changed to a higher range due to additional duties or accountabilities. This does not always mean a regrade or re-rating of the position. 3 different options for this type of increase are available at the discretion of the elected official. Employees go to the minimum of the new pay grade. Pay goes to the first quartile or up to the 5% from the employee's current salary. The money is required, of course, to cover the increase, and that would be done through county services or finance committee, and then on to the quorum court. Promotional increases are separate from merit increases. It does actually state that in our handbook. And so I'm going to move on before I take questions to my next section, which is regrading reclassification, because I want you all to be us to talk about both of those kind of together, because I think that's probably where the meat of this conversation is going to land. Regrading and reclassification is an increase for an employee given that their classification has changed to a higher range due to additional duties or accountabilities. So that definition, per our handbook, is the same for a promotional increase or a regrade reclassification, but the rules are slightly different. For a regrade reclassification, an employee's pay will move them to the new minimum of the new pay range unless their current pay already exceeds this amount. If the position is re-rated at a minimum of 2 grades higher than the employee's pay, their pay may be adjusted to the first quartile. This is treated as a promotion. If the employee's pay is already above the first quartile, then they will receive a 5% increase. Approval of all re-rated positions are reviewed and approved by JSAP and quorum court during the annual budget review. By pay adjustments that fall into this category will be initiated with the new budget year. So I'm going to move over to the visual stuff. So if you will look at, in your packet, there's a page that looks like this. It should be at the back. It's regrade restructuring. This definition is the standard by which the industry refers to a regrade restructuring. A raise based on accountability of the position changing within the department due to restructuring of the department's organizational structure and the scope of the position's duties and responsibilities. This would only occur at budget time, And it can be accomplished one of two ways. Typically, it's through a market study or market analysis. But our policy opens it up and allows for restructuring of departments' organizational structure throughout the year through a promotion. So if you go over to the page that has promotions, you'll see two paths. The lighter blue path is pretty common what a promotion would be. An individual is being promoted within their department to a higher level of accountability of a position. They're moving up the chain of command, so to speak. So they're going from a lower level position to like a supervisor or a lead or a manager. And then the three options of pay at the discretion of the elected, what they would like to ask for, come into play, depending on that employee's, the justification for that employee receiving that promotion. The darker blue at the bottom is to correlate to what would occur currently with our policy if there's a restructure, regrade. So what that means is that we have been, it's become common practice in the county for positions to be regraded, reclassified, and that be the main tool in regards to requesting pay changes. This should not be the norm. It should be a type of pay change that only occurs when there's a major organizational structure shift in a department or the county as a whole. Adding a few more job duties does not necessarily warrant a restructure, regrade of a position. However, this has been the way that the elected officials have had to have used this to accomplish asking for pay for their employees, basically to survive within the confines of the program that we have in place. At some point, a promotional increase or merit increase should be the norm by which the county considers employees' pay increases, and a regrade reclassification should be designated as something that is done annually or at the time of a market analysis. And that's based on market industry like standards when you're looking at pay structure and compensation. So that's not my opinion. That's based on what, the industry is saying. So I've provided you all with these visual representations. I tried to really break this down and simplify it as much as I could because I know this is a lot to absorb and take in. So I'm hoping that all of this will help aid all of you in regards to the different types of increase options that are dictated by our salary administration program and kind of what your role is in the process. And if you all ever have any questions for me that you can't think of right here, you can always call me. I'm available, or email me anytime.
I have a quick one. This slide that's up right now, the promotional slide, are you saying that top light blue path currently exists in the county, or that's something that we need to
They
develop?
both exist. So we consider a promotion in these two ways per policy right now. But this bottom blue half really shouldn't become our norm standard. That should be a very rare thing for us to see unless a department in itself is expanding in capacity of employment, or unless they're restructuring their supervisory levels in their department and the accountability of the person that's carrying out those duties. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Justice Secchi?
Thank you, Judge. My head is just going, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But this is really good. I do have a question as far as unity within the county and the structure. Is there going to be a point, Judge, when all the other elected officials are going to look at this together and kind of have a understanding of how it's going to affect their offices as well?
Well, this is already in our handbook, so
Yeah.
this is just education for you all.
But any,
But if there's changes proposed, I
that's
think is
what
what
I'm
you're getting
talking
at.
about.
Yes.
Uh,
Correct me if I'm wrong, Judge Deakins, but we would be having meetings and discussions with electeds in regards to those.
Yeah.
And see what works in their offices. I know the treasurer's office is a lot different than the county clerk's office,
Yes.
as well as the funding for their employees and whatnot.
There's two things that I would say to that. One, this is all meant to highlight
Unify.
some of the good and the bad of our policy so that we can move forward. The next thing that, if you guys leave here with nothing else tonight, I want to try to impart upon you and get your help with, is we have to have uniformity in the county as a basis of fairness. The county has to move together. And so, yes, I understand that each office has its own eccentricities and that kind of thing, but one of the major things, the issues that I'm seeing in my experience right now is we're all moving in a different direction, and it's not fair to the individual employee in any one department. And so I don't want,
Can I follow up just real
yes,
quick?
absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
I agree with you 100%. And that is what I know that I strive to do, is work together and move this forward. And what can we do? This is a great presentation. I'm glad you did this for the new members. And it is a lot of information to absorb, and it does take time, so give yourselves time, but ask questions. And Ms. Burchett, you're always available. What did Justice Pond, you called her, that nice lady up in HR? She'll answer any of your questions that you have. I think it was even recorded, him saying that. Not to his knowledge, but it was recorded. Anyway, but I know that this is a great vision that the judge has, and the experience that we've had in the past and not communicating, there was friction because not everybody had the same information to base their vote, I guess you can say, because not all of us had the same information.
Right.
But this is an effort that everybody is on the same page and we're all moving together in unity for the betterment of the employees. So anyway, I want to say this is really good, and I'm very pleased, Judge, that y'all are moving in this direction, and thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Justice Simons?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the visual. I'm a visual learner, so
You're
this
welcome.
was very helpful.
I understand. I am too.
Hypothetically, could there be a situation throughout the course of a year where one individual employee benefits from a COLA increase, a merit, and a promotion?
At any time during the year? Is that what you're asking me? Or do you mean at like
through the
budget
course
time?
through the course of a year? Or are there constraints or limitations where, hey, you can only benefit so much? Or, hey, if you're a rock star employee and the quorum court approves a COLA increase and you receive a promotion in your department and then you also benefit from a merit increase, you're taking advantage of
You should
all three.
you should typically, like in that situation, if you're a stellar employee and you've been given a promotion by your elected in your department, and then you get your annual valuation, and then, like, let's say we had some type of rating system for that, that would go forth during the following year's budget, okay? And if the quorum court for that fiscal year had approved a COLA across the board for all employees, then I guess the answer is yes, they could potentially experience multiple types of increases in any given year. That is correct.
I didn't know if there was a mechanism in the handbook as it stands right now to limit.
The overall
Overall
increase? No,
increase.
there's not. There's nothing in there that states that, so,
And
yeah.
I don't have an opinion one way or another. It was
Yeah.
just, it dawned on me when we had three different options. I said, theoretically, somebody might be able to benefit from.
Yeah, these
all
tools are really good. It's just there's a little area, in some areas for improvement that I think would make it a little bit more user-friendly for the elected or hiring official, and also give the employee a better employment experience when it comes to getting that positive feedback from their supervisors in regards to this. I know for a fact that there's one department off the top of my head that has something designed that they've been using for a long time that works really well, as far as, having that like numerical rating like tied to something. So, you know, it can be done. It's just something that all of us have to come together and look at and kind of agree on, that this is the way the county wants to move forward with the mindset of merit and promotional increases and not fall back on regrading, restructuring. I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm just saying that that shouldn't be the norm whenever you're talking about pay and increases for your employees. So, you're welcome.
Justice Lemming, I'm sorry, will you cue your mic again? Thank you, sir. Justice Lemming?
I guess this must be a question to you. You said that we want to move forward and be fair. Is that going back to last year when this was passed, that the HR director and you are going to give raises to like Russell's people, Bobby's people? Is that where you're talking about fairness and going?
No, I mean, it's not my power to give anybody raises to anybody.
Well, the HR director. The HR director in Washington County is going to, I guess your job is going to be given, where the elected officials deal with their own people and take care of their own people and give their own raises and do what they do. Is that going to be turned over to you now? Or-
No, that's not what this is saying. We're saying that HR is that check, just to make sure that if there's a policy saying, you know, these are the limits or these are the procedures that you have to go through, it does come through HR
So
ultimately.
everything.
Not that I'm approving it, though. I mean, I'm not the one determining that amount. That would be the elected official through that rating process, through, like, if we had a merit program in place.
I think the county has got a merit I think there's a merit system in the county, but I don't think it's ever been funded.
I would
think it's-
agree with that. Or used. Maybe the proper term is utilized.
Hadn't been utilized?
But, I mean, I don't think anybody's really ever, I think it's died and gone by the wayside. Nobody really appreciates what it is or how to do it, is what I'm trying to.
Well, I'm just trying to get it in my little country boy head that basically everything's going to come through HR.
It pretty much, when it comes to pay changes right now, has to come through HR because
Is it going
we're,
to eliminate JSAP?
no.
No. It always has gone through HR. HR is our legal check, in addition to other things. So I want to make sure none of this is new policy. This is what our current handbook is.
Well, I thought when we, at the end of the last year, when all this was passed, part of the employees was working on that handbook and part of them wasn't.
No.
No.
All the policy suggestions that were suggested very early on were stripped out of any plan.
So they got.
We're
thrown out.
currently working off the same handbook as we've worked off of for the last.
The blue book.
Since
That's right.
2018.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so all this is meant to do is to inform you guys of our current policy and some of the things that we see in it that are limitations and frustrations, so that nobody is here to impose anything on anybody. I guess aside from you, individuals, as the quorum court will set the policy. But what I'm saying is this is a conversation starter for us to come together as the quorum court and other elected officials to say, what can we do to improve this together and build some sort of consensus together to move forward? Not impose anything on
We
anybody.
all need to work together,
Absolutely, 100%.
100%.
Justice Zeki?
Thank you, Judge. As a point of clarification, the way our employee handbook stands, it's ordinance. And nobody has changed it since then. It needs to be updated and improved, yes, but at present, that is our guideline. That's the law that governs all of this. Okay? So nothing can change. Policy can't change until we update, and that final decision belongs to all of us here on this court. Is that correct, Judge?
100% correct.
Okay.
And so I
Thank
think
you.
our intentions tonight were just to start this conversation with you guys so that you can start asking the questions to start educating yourselves. Because I can only speak from my own experience on the quorum court, but it seems like we'll get down to a decision point, and I don't understand the factors that went into play, if that makes sense. And so we're just here to educate the best we can, you guys, to make the best decisions you can. That's all this is just a conversation starter. Justice Fleming?
I think if we're gonna, compare ourselves, I think we need to adopt who we're gonna compare to. You know, I hear state standards, and I hear Benton County standards, and I hear City of Fayetteville, and, you know, let's pick us somebody, and next year, let's not say, well, she went over here and talked to Benton County. I don't care what Benton County does, I care what Washington County does, and if we're gonna pick a standard, let's pick a standard, whoever we wanna go by. If you're saying the state of Arkansas, let's do state of Arkansas. If you're saying California, whatever, let's just, the quorum court pick one, and let's work off of that one. Let's not come back next year and say, well, they're giving colas this big over here, and they're doing this over there, so.
So typically, when you do a market analysis, you pick your regional market that you're gonna compare to, and you purchase like that type of data, and you have software that helps you manage that comparison. So if that's something that the quorum court would like to be the ones to select, yeah, definitely. I mean, those options could be brought before you all, and a recommendation could be made from that consulting group as to which one may be more appropriate based on the fact that we're a public sector, larger county in this region. So there are some recommendations that those consulting groups would make for purchasing that market data.
Well, I think it's something we need to look at.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to compare, just because Northwest Arkansas is the second, Fayetteville collects the second richest city in the 75 counties. I don't think we need to compare our employees to the richest counties in Northwest Arkansas. I think, well, I mean, we need to, but to a degree, but there's other counties that don't pay nothing like what we pay. You know, you go to Dumas and you go south of here, you go to other places, they don't pay nothing like Northwest Arkansas does.
Right. So typically, whenever you do a market analysis, you're looking for similarities. I mean, you don't. I mean, I guess you could compare the entire state, but like you just stated, you know, the Delta regions of the state don't have as much taxpayer dollars to utilize to put towards pay. So it wouldn't really be a comparable comparison for us to be comparing to that type of market. So that's why you would want to have, you know, somebody who's in that industry to help give some guidance on what the appropriate market data would be that we would want to compare to. And I believe in the past, we were comparing regionally to the Northwest Arkansas region, and maybe some central, you know, employers as well.
I know you say that, but a county judge in Pulaski County is just as important as a county judge in Washington County. Just like the HR director is just as important down there as they are here.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, fairly, they ought to make just as much as you do up here as they do down there. I would say. I mean, the county judge, HR director's HR. Bobby Hill's same as the ones down south, the treasurer and the collectors. So, okay, thank you.
Justice Ricker?
You keep talking about a market survey. What kind of cost would that be for the county to do that?
There's a different cost to the different types of market data that you purchase. It could be anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000. It depends on which bucket of market data you want to purchase. These are national surveys and regional surveys, so they vary in price. We would have to look at those.
Now,
You know.
would this be a market survey that compares Washington County to counties of our size and our general income range? Or
It could be. It could be data that has that in it, or it could be something more on a state umbrella. It could be something where it has regions in, you know, Missouri, you know, parts of Oklahoma, like this, you know, it really depends on what demographic and what region you're wanting to purchase that market data
How long has it been
from.
since Washington County's done any type of market survey on that type of thing?
A market survey, I believe that was done in 2016 or 17. JP Aki, does that sound right to you? Yeah.
Because what was done last year was strictly a title comparison, is my understanding.
It wasn't just title. We looked at job duties as well.
But it wasn't a market survey.
That is not a
It was just
typical, no.
It was a down and dirty, let's compare it. but not a detailed comparison.
Correct. That was not a true market study, no. That was a comparison to Benton County based on job titles and job duties of positions. And you have to understand, when you're looking from county to county, it's really easy to say, well, this person has the same title as this person over here, but you also have to look at a lot of other factors. You have to look at those job duties. You have to also look at the structure of the department, the organization as a whole. So a lot of that comes into play as well when you're looking at, you know,
Right.
comparisons
If
like
the county
that.
decided to do a market survey, what kind of time frame are we talking about? Can they get it done in a hurry? Is that something that we started the process now? It wouldn't be done for a year?
No.
What?
So we actually, the judge's office last year did pay for a market study to be done with our current data. And the results from that were pretty telling. There were some recommendations by that group that carried out that market study for us, and it was a regional market study that they did. And basically, they recommended that we had some legwork to do, some cleanup to do in regards to content in our job descriptions, our hierarchy in our departments, and defining those within the job descriptions. It was very challenging for them to pinpoint certain positions and their accountability based on the information in the job description. So I knew that we were going to have some legwork to do this year, and we are working with elected officials as they come and want to make these adjustments and trying to get those things groomed to the way that they need to be. That takes time. We have over 200 job descriptions in the county, so that does take some time to go through that. As far as actually accomplishing a market study, if we had good data to feed into a market study, depending on the consulting group and how much time they can dedicate to it, last year, I believe it took 3-4 months for us to get the results back. So it just all depends on, the study is only as good as the data you give them, I guess is my point. So we have some work to do on our side too. We have some ownership that we need to take on. HR has been asking for departments' organizational structures. That's really helping with us trying to determine the hierarchy in departments, understand what the content should be appropriate within the job description. And so we're trying to work with elected officials and give some guidance where we see that, you know, there's maybe some deficiencies that could help the position in a market study. Does that make sense?
Well, last year, it seemed like everything came to end of the year, all of a sudden, oh my God, we've got to do stuff. And if we're going to have to do a study, I think we need to get it started. We need to get the process going now.
Well, that process, I mean, has started because we're trying to do the legwork that we need to do. I mean, if you give another consulting group the same data that we gave the group last year, we're going to get the same result. I mean, just common sense, I think. So we need to change the data we're giving them and get it where it needs to be. For whatever those reasons are. I know there are some departments that had some restructuring that they needed to do towards the end of last year that didn't get accomplished last year, so they're working on that this year. So with that comes grooming those job descriptions, defining what the educational duties are, defining what the essential responsibilities are in the job description. So with all that comes then the end stage of the process, that market analysis, that market study. So we're not quite there yet. We all have to work together as a team and get there and do the legwork so that we have good data to give whatever that group is. Because if we're going to pay that much for something, we need to make darn sure that what we're giving them is going to give us the result that we're hoping for.
Yeah, it's kind of the trash in, trash out scenario. And so, listen, I want everybody to know in this court, we're steaming full head towards this, to getting this work done. And this is one of the things that I felt like we left unfinished with last year's quorum court, and so we want to get this done. And this is another update to just say this is going to take some time. It's not just as simple as I even thought it was to just go out and hire somebody. And so, Justice Secchi?
Thank you. Do you remember what the Johansson Group charged us to do the market analysis of this pay range structure
I think that you had asked that, and I believe it was like a percentage of our total annual budget or something like that. And I want to say it was maybe 1%, that for some reason, was it 2%?
It was 2%
Okay.
of our total revenues, and I said, no, we're not going to pay that.
Yeah.
I mean, they did that, I think, back in 2016, when I first joined the court, 2015-16 year, they did that. They did a whole analysis. But the one where they just showed how far behind we were, and we worked together to move the pay range structure, just because comparing what everybody else was paying, ours was so far behind, and we as a quorum court did not keep up with that range. Are we still going to use that market range study to see where we are? Or has that been taken care of? We had that 10% pay range increase, the structure. I'm talking about the structure.
Are you talking about in 2021 to 22?
Yes.
How it was moved 10%, the structure?
Yes.
Okay.
And that because we chose to do that as opposed to paying the Johansson Group the money that was going to be needed. You were a part of that collaboration, and we passed it.
Yeah, I think,
That was-
if I'm understanding the question right, anything we have will be dated at this point,
Okay,
and the market study will. Now, I think this is like anything else in life. Once we get this cleaned up, and if we stay diligent about it,
yes,
maybe we do a smaller market study every couple years. I don't know. That's something to talk about down. We won't get as far behind, and it won't be such a heavy lift to get us to this point.
yeah. Some of the JPs on the personnel committee shake their head, because if we would stay diligent to keep up with the market, we won't have the, I guess, the drowning situation we were in.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Justice Simons?
Thank you, Chair. Speaking of diligence, are we in communication with other counties in the AAC to see if other counties are doing market studies, and is it cost effective to jump in? You know, we talk about Benton County or Madison County. If our neighbors are doing a market survey to address their concerns, might we jump in and collect that data and have some cost sharing?
Well, that's what we tried to do with Benton County this last year, because they have been keeping up and doing that. So that's why we used them and compared to them. We could continue to do that. That's, I would believe, up to the quorum court if that's the route you all want to go. I think that from the conversations I've had with other county HR directors in regards to compensation and what they have going on in their counties, it's all about what the quorum court chooses to pass. So they put forth the proposal, and whether or not it passes is, you know, kind of that fly in that ointment, so to speak, that where then you're either ahead or behind.
Sure.
You know?
I think the problem with that is the assumption that they did it correctly. So what I'm talking about is, instead of we'll use Benton County as an example, instead of, hey, Benton County, you front the bill on buying or purchasing the data, we're gonna hope that you execute on that data, and then we're just gonna piggyback off of that and compare our structure to yours. It's a pretty big assumption that they did the right thing, assuming all things equal, which they're not.
Right.
So my question is, if a neighboring county or multiple counties, or if the AAC has data, can multiple counties go in and purchase that data together and share the cost of that, and then make our own execution of policy based off that data?
I think
Instead of everybody operating in a silo, if we hear that Benton County's looking at doing something similar, like, hey, let's just buy regional data together and share that data.
I think that may be more of a legal question, but I think there's some proprietary data that you would be purchasing, and so I think that there's some type of legal agreement somewhere in there where that might be a concern. I don't know, that would be something we'd have to look into. I've never
Let your
seen
office
that
take care of that.
done before. But yeah, I mean, it's not that it's wrong, just because it's never been done before. Just I'm not sure what that would look like. We would have to look into that.
sure the consultants would have something to say about that.
I'm sure they
At
would,
some
because
point
they
would,
make money
I
off
mean, I'm
of
thinking it's
that,
like a
you know?
software licensing fee or something. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I'm telling you what, we'll do anything to make it as efficient as possible in the guidelines of the law. So, well, Dr. Burchett, I really want to thank you for this. I think this has been a very beneficial conversation for all of us. And once again, I just want to say this is a conversation starter. We don't expect, especially the new members, to be any kind of an expert on this yet. This is hopefully something to plant the seeds for you guys to go back and start asking questions and letting us know what you need to hear more about. I'm always welcome to, I think Director Burchett is too, to come back and discuss this in a group or discuss this with you guys as you have individual questions. This is one, I just want to wrap this up by saying, I think what we've been shown here is we need multiple ways to attack our compensation issues. We need the merit, we need the promotional, we need the restructuring. Not one of those tools alone is going to do everything we need. We got to attack this multi-pronged. We have developed a very bad habit in the county of defaulting to that regrading. It's an effort of survival. You know, I don't fault anybody from it. I think it's us trying to survive and maintain our viability in the job market. But I think there's other tools that could really help us and make you guys' job much more doable. I want to continue to to just really harp on this. We have to have uniformity in the county. We have to have uniformity in the county, and anytime somebody feels pressure to move outside the salary administration, we have to keep our eyes on the goal of us moving together. And you guys have the hardest job in that, because you are, at the end of the day, the gatekeepers of this. The quorum court are the people who have the power over this, and I need you guys to help us try to stay together as a county. Some of this too, I want to touch on in Ms. Burchett's. There's a reason why a lot of this stuff moves with the budget at budget time, so we know how much this costs. Because if we move one area of the county, it has costs all across the county if we do it the right way. You know, if one official says, well, this job needs to be raised in the budget, there may be other officials that have very similar jobs that need to be raised. So it's not just the cost of that one role, if that makes sense. And that's why it's so important to do this at budget, so we know where we're at. Because we're always hitting a moving target, is what I felt like on the quorum court. Is, you know, people are giving raises, doing regrades, and then we do budget, and it's just all over the map, and it gets to be undoable if you guys don't keep it together. And I just want to say this: we have an incredible opportunity over the next year to do something with this that's big. So I look forward to working with you guys, and I look forward to working with our elected officials, because this is going to be something that'll be positive for years to come. I think we've gotten way behind on this in Washington County, and we're seeing the negative impacts of it. So, thank you, Director Burchett. With that, we're going to move on to our consent agenda. We had 4 items on the consent agenda that were passed. Our intention in the County Services Committee was to pass those to the full quorum court. Our county attorney, Counselor Lester, has been looking into this and says that our handbook specifically says they need to move through these committees. That might be something that we think about updating. So what these 4 items on the consent agenda are items that moved from county services to our committee, and so they were, I believe, voted on unanimously. So we'll handle this just like we do in the quorum court. I'm going to read these, and then we'll have a motion to pass the consent agenda, or people can pull items off to discuss individually if they need to. So item number 8.1 on the consent agenda, an ordinance amending the prosecuting attorney's budget for 2023, item 230-040. Number 2, an ordinance amending the circuit court 3 budget for 2023, item 230-041. And ordinance number 3, an ordinance amending the IT budget for 2023, item 23-0-044. Item number 4, an ordinance amending the county road budget for 2023, item 23-0-045. Justice Lyons.
Make a motion to pass the consent agenda on to the quorum court.
I have a motion to pass the consent agenda to the full quorum court by Justice Lyons, a second by Justice Dean. Did you want to comment on it?
There's a lot of, I just want to, can I talk about one deal on the road department? That road department, is there any way you can get me a number of what that's going to cost the county?
Yeah.
Because Well, I don't believe that, because there's the equipment operator position, there is several positions. About everybody comes in as equipment operators, don't they?
Chief, would you like to cue your mic? You might have a.
Thank you, Judge. This ordinance affects two positions where people were raised to the maximum in their pay grade, and it was not budgeted for those two last year. So we've got two people that did what we've asked them to do. They've reached they deserve the promotion. We don't have the money to give it to them.
Okay, that's fine, but and I can see it's $37,000 just for these two people. But at the road department, there is several positions that comes in as equipment operators, is that correct?
That is correct.
But we're just talking about two.
Talking about two.
Thank you. Yes, we'll second it.
A motion to pass by Justice Lyons. I think I had a second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Those will move to the full quorum court consent agenda. Item number 9, an ordinance appropriating $45,000 from the unappropriated reserves in the county library fund to the county library budget for 2023. This is a request from Director Aldrain of the county library system. Of course, they're funded through their state funds, but they have a request to buy a new vehicle, and this is that capital request. With that, I'll entertain motions or questions.
I'll make a motion to pass it to the full quorum court.
I'll second.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lemming, second by Justice Ricker. Justice Simons?
Thank you, Chair. And I don't mean this with any cynicism, it's just complete ignorance. Why does our library need a vehicle?
Our county library maintains several locations throughout the different municipalities in the county, and so they do have like a shuttle service of the books and materials back and forth, and also just, of course, you can understand just kind of an operational need there.
Okay.
And actually, one of our delivery people fell and broke their hip last month, and so they've been kind of short-staffed while that person's out recovering. So, anyways,
Thank you. Just for education and transparency for those that don't already
and
know.
I want to let Justice Ricker comment on that too. He's
I
a
was
former.
just going to tell you about, I was chair of the library board for a number of years. All the libraries in Washington County, except for the city of Fayetteville, belong to the Washington County Library Association, so they do a shuttle service. If you want a book on tying knots, Springdale may have it, but you're asking it out of the Winslow Library. They do their weekly shuttle run, and they'll get the books and take library to library and all that. So that's what the vehicle does.
Any further discussion on the item? Any public comments? Okay, I have a motion to pass item 9.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lemming, second by Justice Ricker. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 9.1 will move to the full quorum court. Item number 10, an ordinance amending the assessor's budget for 2023. I see Assessor Hill back there. Assessor Hill, would you like to introduce this and speak to it?
Yeah, this is, we have two part-time people that work in our outer offices, one at Springdale, one at Fayetteville. They're paid out of the part-time salary line item. They work 30 hours a week, and when we went through the salary adjustment, we had turned our budgets in before the salary adjustment was finalized in December. We turned our budgets in, I think it was August. And so we weren't, those had went through, and they just kind of got forgotten about when it came to the salary adjustment. And so I've got a person that's been there 23 years. And so we adjusted them up what I had in that line item, but it wasn't comparable. So in order to maintain fairness and equity within our office, because they're working with a person on their left and their right who both got tremendous pay jumps, and many of them, and well, yeah, they haven't been working there as long as this person. So we're asking to be able to raise theirs in the direct proportion to the same raises that everybody else received. So the total amount that's salary plus benefits and all of that is $12,297. We are a commission-based office, which means the schools pick up the majority of that. The part of the county that would be responsible for to the county general budget would be $1,100 for the year. And so we're asking for those two folks.
Justice Fleming?
I make a motion that we pass recommendation to the full quorum court.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court by Justice Fleming, a second by Justice Dean. Any further discussion? This is maybe an example of what we just talked about here, where I don't want to judge the merits of Assessor Hill's positions, but there are part-time positions all around this county that were, I think, by just a function of necessity, were left out of our salary administration raises last year. So where I'm going with that is, there are a lot of people sitting here, and I'm having to hold them back at the judge's office saying, we as part-time people have not been recognized. We need our pay to be evaluated. We need to move together as a county, because I don't know what the cost of this is. I understand the cost of Assessor Hill's particular item here, and I understand the commission-based incentive of that, but all I'm asking of you, ladies and gentlemen, is that you be aware and consider that these types of moves have a cost countywide, and I haven't been able to assess how much that is. One of the primary offices that we're having conversations with is our election commission. A lot of those people, by their nature, even the people who work year-round, are part-time designees. I don't know how much that costs to reevaluate their salaries and give them that money. So I just posit that with you ladies and gentlemen to be wary and move with caution on things like this. Justice Pond?
Yes, if I may address Assessor Hill, this money will be coming from the county will be like 9%.
Correct, yeah, the county general's portion of that would be $1,100 for the year for both of these people.
That's kind of, which is what you said earlier.
Yes.
The rest of that comes from the schools
In the city.
and the cities. And that's just an example there of what many times different departments, their changes, they're a different animal. They don't affect the county the same way other departments might, and vice versa. Other departments don't affect them the same way.
And I guess technically, they're, by federal standards, I've been told they're really full-time, but it's just paid through a part-time line item. So it's a separate line item from the regular general salary where everybody else was appropriated. So, and again, these are people doing the same duties to the person on either side of them. It's not a completely different office or a completely different department that is here seasonally.
So it's just another, and a good example of how sometimes it's very difficult to get us all, every department and all of us on the same page.
Yes, and I think
you-
it's that simplistic if you look through it through a fiscal lens only. But what I'm saying is, if we're going to start giving part-time designees raises, what does the judge's office or any other elected official in this county tell their part-time designees at this moment?
Thank you.
It's just a question that I want you guys to just consider the magnitude of what you're about to do. I also think there's a good point with this being designated a full-time position federally, which that's legalese above but I think there's benefits to these jobs too, if that's correct, that would have to be increased.
Well, that's added in. That's with the benefits.
Okay. And I'd also like to note that we haven't talked about it, but there's an Article 1 on this to change a title in this office. And I'd also like to say that that breaks a lot of the consistency that we just went over and talked about of comparability within with our county, both internally and then externally. It causes a lot of problems to move out individually like that and do unique title changes. And I'd love to give you an opportunity to speak to that, because I don't want to just,
Yeah, I'll speak to it. I really don't think it's really within the quorum court's boundaries to determine that. That is entirely determined by the elected official under state statute. So I really don't even know why it would even come before the quorum court. I mean, we did bring it through JSAP. It passed through JSAP. I have right now I have 3 chief deputies. I have 2 departments in my office. We have real estate and personal property. I have a chief deputy of real estate. I have a chief deputy of personal property. And so I went to, consulted with the HR director for AAC, and she thought this could be a legal lawsuit. I also have a chief deputy, so I have 3 chief deputies. The chief deputy is over, in our structure, is over the other 2 chief deputies who are over those departments. And so if, say, we had 2 chief deputies that were a male and one was a female, and the female was making less than the other 2, then that could open that up. Well, that person, actually, those 2 chief deputies answer to the other chief deputy. See the confusion? So we kind of went with the model of the county judge's office. He has a chief of staff. The chief of staff, and that's what I was wanting to call, or that's what I'm calling this position, chief of staff. They're over different departments who are over that. So, and in the future, we're looking at, too, we have a GIS department. Currently, they're under the chief deputy of real estate, but I could see within maybe 2 years moving that out as a separate department, as that department, as we increase the responsibilities and capabilities because that's where the industry's going. Then they would have 3 different departments, so it just creates a definite elevation that the chief of staff is over these chief deputies, that they answer to the chief of staff, and then those people under there. So it fits our organizational chart perfectly. It kind of coincides with what's currently going on in the county judge's office. The chief of staff oversees different departments. And so I feel like it flows in perfectly with the structure that we have here at Washington County.
the chief of staff in the judge's office and the chief of staff, I would have to posit, are very different jobs. And those job descriptions are extensively different. And so if we go back to the conversation we just had about keeping things comparable, keeping some utility there with other counties and stuff, I think it introduces problems. And once again, I'm just trying to highlight something that I want you guys to consider heavily, that this is a matter that is not just as simple as changing a title. It has consequences way outside of that. And I'm not sure, I mean, I know we've talked a lot about it if we have other counties that have this. I know
there are other regions across, we've talked with other people on our industry. There are several different jurisdictions that have a chief of
because I know
staff.
at one point we had Pulaski County brought up, but I think they call theirs like a chief administrator or something.
They have
so
a
that would
bunch
be
of
very,
different titles that we don't even have.
Yeah, so I mean, but I'm saying that if we wanted to remain comparable, the other thing I want to make very clear is the citing of the statute. You know, we wanted to assess that with Counselor Lester just to see. You sent us that law. Counselor Lester's assessment of that was he wishes that were not true because it's very, not that we don't enjoy seeing every one of you guys' faces, but this has budget implications. And so therefore, he very much thinks this is underneath the purview of the quorum court. And so I just wanted to let you guys have that information too. Justice Lemming?
Russell, I just want to say thank you and Bobby for all y'all's hard work in Little Rock. I read about you in the County Line magazine and stuff, and the county should be appreciating y'all for all the hard work y'all do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Justice Hires?
Thank you. I'm hoping somebody can clear something up for me because I'm kind of having a hard time understanding. I just went and looked back at the 4 things that we just passed under the consent agenda that all included title changes, grade changes, and pay increases. And so I'm trying to understand the difference. Can someone help me understand the difference between this particular piece and the 4 that we just passed? I don't get it.
Well, the one is just, it's appropriating money to a line item, the part-time line item, so that's one thing. The title change has no budget. There's no budget impact on it, so we're just simply changing the name of the title to lessen the confusion and to help with our structure, and off of the guidance of the AAC Legal Counsel.
I'm understanding what you're asking. I'm not understanding how it's different from the things that we just passed.
Oh, I don't know.
But yeah, that's my question. Yeah. That's the only difference.
Director Burchett, would you like to speak to that? She's involved in all the intricate details of those other ordinances, and I think she'd do a much more justice to that.
Russell, might want that. Okay, you're gonna have to help me out. What were the 4 that were passed?
I'm sorry.
Roll back. I'm sorry, I don't have a copy.
It was the prosecuting attorneys changes,
Collector.
the circuit court
Oh, no,
3
collector got
changes,
pulled out.
and the IT budget.
Okay,
I think
county roads
Chief
didn't
might
have a title change. Yeah, county roads is not a title change. They just got promoted within their pay tiers, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. Okay, so the difference between just a title change and what's being presented in these other ordinances is that these positions actually truly got regraded through the regrading software we have. So the essence of the structure and the accountability of the duties and all of that, they got regraded along with that title, okay? So that's the difference.
I don't.
Which one was regraded?
I mean, I'm looking at this one right here, the prosecuting attorney. There were changes in grades, right?
Yes, they were regraded. Yes.
Okay, okay. But the ones that,
I think you're asking what's the difference between the assessor's request and their title change and
Yes.
these. Okay, so the difference is that title change didn't have a regrade associated with it. They're just asking for the label, the title, for the job description that's already in place for a chief deputy to be changed to a chief of staff. So that's the difference. The essence of those other jobs, duties shifted and changed potentially. Make sense? Okay.
Do part-time positions, they don't do grading?
Not currently.
Right.
That was something that was, asked of last year through policy, and that got, of course, knocked down fine. But yeah, we do need to kind of think about how we're going to treat them going forward. I will say that, and I think Assessor Hill kind of touched upon this a little bit. They work 30 hours a week. Federal law, they're full-time. So legally, in HR, whenever somebody is working consistently 30 hours a week, we look at that average work hours, and if they're hitting 130 hours or more in a month, we legally have to offer them county health insurance benefits, and the county does have a match that it has to contribute to that payment of those monthly premiums. And so that cost does have to be calculated in whenever part-time employees are working those 30 hours a week, or if they're working 20 or more consistently a week for retirement. So there are benefit costs associated with part-time in the way in which the county is currently treating part-time employees, okay? So I didn't see it in the ordinance. I saw retirement, so I think that might be something we might need some extra money in that ordinance for, just to cover those employees potentially in case they need, or in case they want to elect to sign up for medical, dental, vision insurance through the county's benefit program. Okay, I just didn't want that to get left out.
Clear as mud, Justice Hires? Okay. Justice Secchi?
Could you make this clear? Is that position now going to change to full-time, or is he going to stay in part-time?
Well, the position is currently budgeted as part-time.
But we have to change.
Well, so we have a policy issue in our handbook with that, the way we classify employees. So
Right.
in our handbook, we classify part-time as 30 hours or less a week. So that definition needs to change.
Okay.
And the way in which we budget then also needs to change for those employees. So at some point, that needs to be looked at.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? Public comments? Bring back the question. Item 10.1, we have a motion to pass to the full quorum report with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lemming, second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item 10.1 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 11, an ordinance, I'm sorry, we removed item 11 for next month. Thanks for keeping me honest. Item number 12, an ordinance amending the Circuit Court 8 budget for 2023. Is that correct? No, I think he's here for. Director Burchett, are you familiar with this ordinance?
No, I didn't think that Judge Warren had any changes. I think that's supposed to be Judge Zimmerman's group.
Mr. Kelly, does this look familiar aside from title only?
Aside from the department?
No, Your Honor, this appears to be something that originated out of Judge Warren's.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'm not familiar with this. I'm not exactly sure what this is.
I'd like to make a motion to table this.
Just a second, let me get you.
Sorry.
Justice Secchi?
I'd like to make a motion to table this until we have more adequate information
Okay.
on that to next month's meeting.
I have a motion to table until next month's Finance and Budget Committee meeting by motion by Justice Secchi, second by Justice Dean. Justice Koger?
My question is, at the JSAP meeting, it was Judge Zimmerman, so is it just a typo? Is that what the number is? No? No?
This isn't enough to cover Judge Zimmerman's request, so I don't think it's just a typo.
Okay, I was just,
So just for my clarification, did Judge Zimmerman's court have things on the consent agenda and something outside of the consent agenda?
I'm confused.
She's item 3, you said?
Yeah, I'm a little bit remiss. I review these agendas before we come down here, and this one slipped right by me. I never assumed that we would have this issue. I apologize. I thought there might be somebody from the court here. So with that, I think we take up Justice Secchi's motion unless somebody has another. So I had a motion to pass to the next month's Finance and Budget Committee by Justice Secchi and a second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Those opposed? We'll take that up next month. Justice Simons?
Thank you, Chair. Just procedurally, if for some reason Judge Warren comes up with a time-sensitive reason that this needs to be brought up instead of waiting till next month, somebody on this court could bring it before the quorum court.
That's correct.
Okay.
You guys could suspend the rules and add it to the agenda.
Might reach out to Judge Warren and just see why she wasn't able to come tonight, or
Time sensitivity would lend yourself to coming to
You
the
would
meeting,
think
I would think. All right. Item number 13. An ordinance adjusting carryover revenues in the funds for 2023. I'm going to introduce this, and if we need a more detailed explanation, we'll bring up Treasurer Hill. But if you guys, as part of the budget every year, when we're going through that process, Treasurer Hill estimates the carryover amounts from unspent funds from the year before. And we budget off that because that's funds that we can rebudget in the new year. This ordinance cleans that up and basically brings them to reality. It's brought to us at this time because, of course, there's invoices paid that are actually paid in January, February of the current year that actually apply to the previous year, and that's why, from a timing standpoint, we're dealing with this now. Justice Secchi?
I'd like to make a motion to pass this on to the full quorum court with the due pass recommendation.
Motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Secchi, second by Justice Dean. Are there any further questions or comments? Any public comments? I have a motion to pass item 13.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Zeki, second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item number 13 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 14, an ordinance amending the county budget for 2022. Kind of hand in hand with that, on the other side of this coin, there are accounts that both have unspent dollars and then some accounts that are overspent. And this cleans up and zeroes all those accounts out for the prior year's budget. This is basically the housekeeping item to keep us in compliance with the ledge audit. Justice Zeki?
I'd like to make a motion to pass this on to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Zeki, second by Justice Lyons. Further discussion? Justice Lemming?
Just clarifying, we're going from 787,000 to 1.2 million? Is that the number we're taking that out of unappropriated reserves, and that's what it's taken to fill that gap?
Comptroller Ooh, that was a blast from the past. Comptroller Story, would you like to speak to this a little bit? Maybe give us some clarification on it?
I think y'all received an additional attachment to go with this that's entitled, it's one of the two schedules that's entitled Washington County Housekeeping Schedule. And then, well, both of them are titled that way, but one is an attachment A over on the upper right-hand side of the page, and attachment B. And basically, according to our guidelines from the quorum court, all salaries need to be approved by the quorum court on a position basis. And at the end of the year, we have a few of these different categories that need to be, in effect, approved by the quorum court in order for them to be modified for and cleaned up for the year. So the attachment A are reductions that are required to bring us in line with that quorum court requirement, and attachment B are the appropriations needed in order to do that. The net effect is $421,000, which is, if you look on attachment B, row 46, the required quorum court net approval for unappropriated reserves. It breaks it down by general services, fire department, line 50, employee insurance, health insurance, line 51, employee insurance prescriptions, and then line 52, road interfund transfers. So all of these items are in the compensation section, if I believe I'm saying that right, in the 1000 series, that need to be adjusted to accommodate the quorum court requirement to be approved as a compensation item. They are in the benefits section, but they are part of compensation. Now, I believe that's correct. I'm still learning all of these different aspects, but I'm comfortable that this is what is required. Treasurer Hill might have a comment or two he might want to make that speaks to that possibly, but that's the net effect is the $421,000.
Justice Zeki?
This is the first time since 2015 that we've had this kind of, this is the first time since 2015 that we've had this wonderful breakdown
Oh,
that you can
really?
actually understand without having 10 pages of what in the world are you talking about? And
Well,
it
we're not
takes you 4
through. I'm gonna
years to
keep
figure
tweaking
it.
this thing until it's so obvious to everybody.
This
help.
floats my boat, okay? I just want to say thank you.
The goal is to make it as understandable as possible, as quickly as possible, because your time is limited in these meetings.
And
So,
every JP has their own opinion, but for the new ones, this one page front and back is a lot better than 8 pages of trying to break it down and not understand it. So,
I've also color-coded it to the extent possible to not go to the extreme, but you should
I
be
like
able to match colors to where a number's falling out in a total column
I hope nobody's colorblind,
to
but
better
thank you.
understand. Pardon?
Nothing, that was just being a little, it's getting late, so I get dappy. So thank you, I just want to say thank you. This is
welcome. Thank you,
fantastic,
ma'am.
Judge, great decision in hiring this man.
I take all the credit for this man. I think maybe what you're alluding to, Justice Fleming, and if you have any information to speak to this, is the discrepancy between the two numbers is the 1002 line item. The employee insurance. Justice Fleming, sorry.
We heard from the insurance guy, and he talks a lot in here that, you know, we're holding our own, we're not having to infuse it. This just looks like a $411,000 infusement to me for the insurance purposely. Is that true or not true?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand all that.
Is that kind of we're having to infuse the insurance, the employee insurance?
Well, it's a part, yeah, it's a major part of that.
So it's, must not be holding its own.
We're not doing anything with cash money.
Do what, sir?
We're not doing anything with cash money as far as,
It's just paper?
on the budget side of things. I'm not gonna do any transfer of $411,000 from general to employee.
Treasurer Hill, maybe you might come up here and.
So basically, you're telling me it's just paper cleanup?
Paper budget cleanup,
So
my opinion of it.
actually, no money's gonna change banking accounts?
No, not on my side of the cash balances.
Okay.
This is just cleaning up the budget side of things.
I wished I could call my bank, clean it up like that. Thank you.
Any other discussion or questions? I had a motion to pass the full quorum court with the well, first of all, I'm sorry, I apologize. Let's take up any public comments on this item. We'll take up the question. I had a motion to pass item 14.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Zeki, second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item number 14 will move to the full quorum court. Item number 15, an ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $339,830 in the high-intensity drug trafficking areas grant fund and appropriating $339,830 from the HIDA grant fund to the HIDA 2023 budget for 2023. This is a grant that we receive annually to fund law enforcement drug, it's getting late for me too, Justice Zeki, drug mitigation efforts. Justice Fleming?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept it and do pass by quorum court.
I second.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Fleming, a second by Justice Ricker. Any further discussion, questions? Any public comments? I have a motion to pass item 15.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Fleming, second by Justice Ricker. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item 15.1 will move to the full quorum court. Item number 16, an ordinance anticipating additional grant revenue in the Drug Court Grant Fund for 2023 and appropriating said revenue to the various budgets within the Drug Court Grant Fund for 2023. This is a grant that we get to support our drug court efforts. This is us accepting that grant and allocating it out to be spent. Justice Ricker?
Make a motion to pass this to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ricker, a second by Justice Lyons. Any further discussion? Any public comments? Taking up the question, I have a motion to pass item 16.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ricker, second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item number 16 will move to the full quorum court. Item number 17, an ordinance appropriating $4,000 from the CSU fund to the Buildings and Grounds budget for 2022. Director McAllister has requested that she be able to make some changes to her rooms. Chief, do you know the details of this off the top of your head? Did you speak to?
It's repurposing.
We've worked him hard today. He's stove up.
She is repurposing 2 rooms, so what we're doing is providing electrical work and cabling work and run room to make it work, and building 2 bunk beds in another room to make it work.
This will increase her housing. These funds come from that, once again, we had some changes last month to this, but there's a fund that was donated to the operations of the CSU when they started, and that fund still has a balance. We're taking that out to cover the supplies, and Buildings and Grounds is providing the labor. That's what the $4,000 represents. Justice Lemming?
I'd like to make a motion that we pass it to the full quorum court for due passage.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lemming, second by Justice Dennis. Further discussion, Justice Koger?
Yes, I just want to be clear, when you say repurposing, we're not losing any beds, correct?
We're not losing any beds.
Thank you.
Justice Lemming?
I should ask this, well, I tried, and you didn't recognize, didn't see me, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
it said something about we didn't get a grant, or they didn't, UMAS didn't pay something on the back here. What was that?
Are you talking about the funding that we passed last month?
There's something about it. I seen it back here when the comptroller was talking, and
Oh,
it says on
yeah,
there
so our agreement with the state is that we provide the facility and the
Right.
state funds the operation. And
Right.
what happened last year is we made some changes to the facility that I can't speak to necessarily of why, but we tried to bill that to the state. And the state actually paid them. And then they came back later and said, nope, we don't, those are not our expenses, and we're gonna take them out of your next month's installment. And so we were having to move money over to cover that negative balance, if that makes sense.
well, I thought I seen it last month on the quorum court too.
We did.
Okay.
The comptroller's report was just recognizing that coming out of the
so it's-
funds,
okay.
keeping track of it.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or questions? Any public comments? Oh, sorry, Justice Rio Stafford?
That's okay. I'm just glad we've gotten the CSU up and running again. Has there been, and I haven't kept up with, the legislative session just ended. In terms of what the state is providing to this program, has that changed at all? Is it gonna keep going? Like, what kind of sense do you know?
I can give you a 50% answer.
Okay.
Nothing has changed. I don't know what that
Good.
means moving forward. I mean, I think we're always subject to that. I think the next battle of that would be coming next spring when they move into the budget season. So
Okay.
no laws have changed it, but when they move into that budget season, it might be something to, that we have to keep a watch on.
Keep a watch on, yeah, and whatever we can do to encourage them to keep going.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll absolutely do what I can.
Thanks.
Any other discussion or questions? Public comments. I have a motion to pass item 17.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lemming, a second by Justice Dennis. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item 17 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item 18. An ordinance appropriating unused ARPA funds to the unappropriated reserves in the unappropriated reserves of the 911 budget to the ARPA fund budget for 2023. As this ordinance will clarify, we started the project of updating our 911 call centers, consoles. That work is still ongoing. So while we appropriated that money last year, we've cycled out of that budget year. This is taking what hasn't been spent out of those funds that moved back into the unappropriated reserves and reappropriating for that original purpose. Justice Ecke?
I'd like to make a motion. We pass this on to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke. Second by Justice Lyons. Any further discussion or questions? Public comments? I have a motion to pass item 18.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item 18.1 will move to the full quorum court. Item 19.1, an ordinance appropriating funds from the ARPA fund to the ARPA budget for 2023. Much like the previous ordinance, the circuit clerk made some renovations to his office underneath the COVID mitigation guidelines. That work is not fully completed by the end of the year. This reappropriates that money that was swept back into the unappropriated reserves, back into those budgets for that original purpose. Justice Lyons?
Make a motion to pass this to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lyons, a second by Justice Dean. Any further discussion or questions? Public comments? Taking up the question, I have a motion to pass item number 19.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lyons, second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 19 will move to the full quorum court. Item number 20, an ordinance appropriating $1 million from the ARPA fund to the ARPA budget for 2023. I would like to thank Justice Lemming for sponsoring this ordinance. Justice Lemming, would you like to speak to this?
Well, this is going to be we talked about this before about the CSU, and it's timed, huh? No, it's for the
Emergency operations.
Yes. And it's time for Washington County to put them people in one facility to operate out of. They've been bouncing around. Whenever COVID was here, John and his office, they was in Little Rock getting supplies. They're bouncing from building to building, and the county we've put them in several different places, and it's time to locate them in one position where they need to be, and they need to be centrally located here in Fayetteville, and so I move that we pass this to the full quorum court.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court by Justice Lemming, second by Justice Lyons. Justice Ecke?
One more comment. If the tornadoes that ripped through Arkansas a couple of weeks ago is an indication of how much we need this. We're vulnerable to these kind of storms, and we have to be prepared. And I would like for us to undergird and to support and to finance this operation that John Luther and his staff desperately need. And this will serve all of Washington County. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Ecke. Justice Koger?
Thank you, Judge. I just have, so do we need to talk about this? Is this where the building is going to be?
Yeah, you should have had a map in your packet there. That's where we've decided to locate the facility on the South Campus. That's our preferred location. This money, of course, gets us into architectural and engineering work. If there's some problem that arises with that location, we still want it on South Campus. But we might have to move it from this exact location if that makes sense. But we fully feel like that's the most viable location. Chief Johnson's been studying this, and that's where he recommends we put it.
Okay, another question is, when this first came up, we talked about partnerships with maybe Fayetteville and Springdale. Could you tell us how that, has that been discussed by you in Springdale and Fayetteville, or?
That has been discussed, not by me in details with Springdale. We had initial discussions with the city of Fayetteville. I think the reality of two big major criteria spoke to me in this. One is we're going to have to move on this very quickly. And so to partner with another municipality or legal entity complicates things. From criteria beyond their control, just legally and things like that, who owns what, who's responsible for what. And so to get this done for Washington County, I think it's most beneficial to do this on South Campus. The second thing is, when I was looking around, we have man and machine at South Campus. And so if the worst were to happen, like Justice Secchi alluded to, we have a major storm, there's a lot of damage. We're going to have the machines down there to clear things out of the way for this operations center in a very, very quick manner. And that will be under the control of the county, and I think that kind of response is what speaks to me.
One more thing. What about cost? Do we have any idea about I mean, this is just, I mean, I realize what this is for, but are there any numbers we have on the actual cost?
Any numbers at this point would be a guess. I think we're definitely, I almost hesitate to put out a number because this architectural and engineering work will give us a very finite budget. Not finite, I mean, budgets are by their nature, but it will give us a much more exact number with the current market conditions and supply chain demands that we're seeing.
Okay, I guess I'm thinking back to last year when it came up with the sheriff's office, of the jail, and I think it was $250,000 for architectural fees to get started on that.
Mm-hmm.
So we got $1 million to start on this, architecture and engineering.
Yeah, and the synthesis of this number is Chief Johnson talking to some of the contacts in the community that he has to do a facility of this type. And we're lucky in this area that we have several firms that I think will be interested in doing this work for us. And so this is the estimate we think to get that number started. And I think we're definitely being very, we are ensuring that we have enough funds to keep this work going basically monthly, so we don't hold up having to come back to you individuals and slow that project down, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm for this. I'm not trying to be difficult, but I just wanted to kind of understand that. And when you say that time, you didn't say time is of the essence, but something like that. So
Yep.
What are we working against?
The ARPA mandates that this money be appropriated by the end of next year, 2024, and that it be spent by the end of 2026. Justice Leming?
I'd like to say one more thing. If people don't know, that building to the right of this drawing here, John, they already use that building. They've got a lot of their equipment in that building. So this location is pretty much a perfect location. And like Patrick said, the road department's in the red right straight across the street. So, if there is a disaster there, they can really help to get stuff moving out quickly. But that location is a really good location. And it's pretty much centrally located in Washington County.
Yes, as Justice Secchi's saying over here, we do own it, and so that was one of my goals too. There would be no land acquisition costs in this if we could help it by any means, and so we do own that land, and so we're getting the opportunity to put all of our funding into the building, the structure. Any other discussion or questions that we can try to answer? Justice Rios Stafford?
Just in comments, I know when we first discussed this, I was talking about, location, so this does meet some of the criteria that we had discussed. It's, as you can see from the map, it's outside of floodplain. That's good. It's near that bypass that goes over to the interstate. So that's, quick and easy access. And it's on our county land, so yeah, I think that seems like it fits a lot of the criteria we talked about previously. Yeah, that's all I had to say, really.
I want to heap praise where we can, and while I'll take full responsibility for Comptroller's story and what he's doing, I can't tell you, ladies and gentlemen, how blessed we are to have Chief Johnson here with us in this project and his experience. And I'm a true believer that there's nothing's left to coincidence, and he has the experience to help move this project. If not for having him on our staff, I don't know that there'd be any way we would get this done by the end of 26. And so I really thank him and his efforts. He's putting a lot of time into this. He's talked to Emergency Management Director Luther, so we want to make sure we're accommodating all of his needs and what he desires in this building. And so I think this is a great thing well, you know my opinion. This is the great thing for Washington County. Further comments? Public comments? If you're coming, let's go. There you go.
Is that working? Okay.
That's it.
I appreciate that greeting tonight. That was very welcoming. I'm Sarah Moore. I'm actually on the City Council in Fayetteville, and I'm the Executive Director of the Arkansas Justice Reform Coalition. And we've talked a lot about these ARPA monies. Some folks are new on the quorum court since this conversation started. But there has been a lot of concern about the overall discussion and having full visibility to the ARPA funds and how much is already spent or how much is allocated going forward. I just did a quick Google. I'm not Chief of Staff Johnson with a building background, but it said 10 to 20% of your total project cost is usually what your engineering cost is. And so really it sounds like this building is probably a $5 to $10 million project. I guess I'm just, as a taxpayer and someone that does support us having an emergency building, it would just be nice to have a ballpark if you're going to put $1 million forward to understand how that fits into ARPA money with all of the different allocations and appropriations that have been made for ARPA, the talk of the potential that we're going to also build a expensive jail project as well. I start to have concerns about, do we have enough money in the ARPA with overruns that happen on labor and materials with these types of projects. And so I really would hope that we'd consider the total all-in cost before we would move something like this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments? With that, we'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass item 20.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lemming. Sorry, I can't read my own handwriting. Justice Lemming, second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item 20.1 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 21, an ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $7,496.32 and appropriating the said $7,496.32 to the various line items in the IT budget. We had an IT vehicle I think it was last year at some point, involved in an auto accident. It was rear-ended. So this is accepting the insurance claim for that and reappropriating it to the line so it can pay for the repairs. Justice Simons?
I make a motion, we send this to the quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Simons, second by Justice Lemming. Any further discussion? Justice Lemming, did you want to speak to this, or were you queued up for the second? Okay. Any further discussion or questions? Public comments? We'll take up the question. We have a motion to pass item 21.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Simons, second by Justice Lemming. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item 21 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item 22, an ordinance appropriating $18,700 from the unappropriated reserves to the Buildings and Grounds budget for 2023. Chief Johnson, you've been quite popular tonight, but I'm going to ask you to come back over here one more time and give us a synopsis of what this is for and an update of what's been done.
Thank you, Judge. This building has leaked for 23 years. Judge Lindsay's courtroom is now Judge Threet's courtroom. And when I saw the leak, I knew almost automatically why it was leaking. We contacted some folks that actually came and fixed, there's two courtrooms that leak. They came and fixed one of them. This ordinance will pay them for fixing that one and fixing what is now Judge Lindsay's courtroom, so we can get the two major masonry leaks fixed. When that is done, I'm going to go out with a request for proposal to caulk and reseal this building. What we determined in the process of fixing this is the 35-year-old caulking between the brick and the windows in this building is failing, And if you look in that corner of that window right there where the wallpaper's peeling off, we have that situation throughout the building. In some places, it's much more severe than that right there. So my intent is if you approve this, we'll get the masonry issues fixed, which are the big leaks. And then we will get a proposal and come before you with the money to caulk and reseal the building. Thank you.
Justice Fleming,
I make a motion, we pass this to the full quorum court, do pass.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with the do pass recommendation by Justice Fleming, a second by Justice Lyons. Further discussion. Justice Koger?
Thank you, Judge. I'm happy to hear that we're doing this, but what about the Public Defender's Office? They've had leaks and mold for a long time, and I never can find out anything about when that might be fixed.
I was there last week. They don't have any leaks today. We are working on a roof claim settlement that has been going on for
3
a
years.
long time. I think that we're close to settling that. If we settle it, that building will be the second building we put a new roof on. We've got to do the health department building first.
Okay, and last year we appropriated $30,000 for the Public Defender's Office. But no, I'm not talking about the roof, I'm talking about inside the building. When
Yeah.
might that be done?
I don't have anything to report on that.
Justice Rios Stafford?
Thank you, Judge. Just out of curiosity, so you mentioned that the caulking issue is just because it's getting old. Is it the same with the masonry issue? Is it just because of the age of the building, or is that something different?
The masonry issue, if you go look, there's an eyebrow around this building between the 4th floor and the 5th floor. The top surface of that eyebrow is brick. God never intended for brick to be a roofing material. The water has to go through the brick, and it has to get back out of that eyebrow. Some previous folks that tried to fix the problem went on the surface and caulked all the weep holes shut. So now instead of the weep holes letting the water out, the weep holes track the water within the building. And so there's some people been looking for it for 23 years.
Thank you. I'm glad they found the problem.
Justice Wilson?
If I could throw some information in for the good of the order, and I appreciate all of that too. My dad started a business in 1963 in Northeast Arkansas, taking care of this very issue. My brother runs the business over there now. It covers the Jonesboro area, the tuck pointing, the caulking and everything. They've taken care of the courthouse in Jonesboro. But a lot of that my dad learned how to do, and a lot of things that contribute to this, sometimes that mortar just can't hold up over the years. Brick and mortar will absorb water, and especially in the winter, we know what happens to water when it freezes and it expands. It will actually crack the mortar and deteriorate it, and it adds to the problem. And of course, caulking won't hold up forever either, so that only adds to the problem. And buildings, just like everything else, needs repair over the years. So that just adds to the problem as the years go on. So I'm glad that this is being addressed. You know, buildings 20, 30, 40 years down the road, they all need this kind of work.
Yeah, and I'd like to say we have some incredible vendors here in Washington County who really partner with us. And I think Chief Johnson's been very complimental of who's helping us with this. It's not just a business item for them. They come to help Washington County and our courthouse, and I want to thank them very much for that. So, with that, any other discussion? Public comments? With that, we'll take up the question. Item 22.1. I have a motion to pass the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lemming, second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item 22 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item 23, an ordinance amending ordinance 20 23-003. Our Finance and Budget Committee meeting next May or next month is on the 9th. There are special elections going on during that time, and they use this room for a voting location. So this ordinance moves that meeting to Monday, May the 8th at 6 p.m. so they can still use this room for their voting efforts. Justice Lyons?
Make a motion to move this to the full quorum court with a past due recommendation.
Motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lyons, second by Justice Dean. Any further comments or questions? Any public comments? I have a motion to pass item 23.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lyons, second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item 23 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 24. An ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $60,112.90 in the LATC fund and appropriating said $60,112.90 to the LATC fund for 2023. Washington County owns and maintains one traffic light, which is a piece of trivia that I did not realize until taking office. That traffic light is on the intersection of 412 and Sonora Road. There's a grade school right there for all those who have been out there. There's a Sonora church on the other side. So all that to say, that traffic light has experienced a lot of issues lately. It's old, the technology on it's old, and it acts a little bit crazy, and it's causing issues. All that to say, that's something that's been sprung upon us, that issue, and it's an unfunded project. Luckily, Treasurer Hill brought to my attention that we received another layer of ARPA funds that are revenue replacement funds, and that's what this LATC fund is. And so these can be used for anything, capital expenditures for the county, with the exception of lobbying efforts. So with that, we received a quote to replace and very much upgrade that light at that intersection for $74,500. We would like to use this $60,000 of funds to help offset that cost and supplement the rest of it out of the road budget so that we can begin work on that traffic light and get that updated. Justice Lemming?
I'd like to make a motion that we pass this and take it to the full quorum court. And I'd also like to donate that to the school when we get done fixing it.
Well, another piece of trivia for you is that RDOT does not maintain any traffic lights, and I now understand why that is, because they're very, so anyway, that's right. Motion to pass to the full quorum court by Justice Lemming, a second, I believe I heard by Justice Dean. Any further discussion? Any public comments? I have a motion to pass item 24.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lemming, second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 24 will move to the full quorum court. We will take up added item number 25, which is our sweep ordinance. Oh, there it is. An ordinance amending the Washington County budget for 2023. I think we touched on this a little bit last time. Any unused salary amounts from the first, we will do this quarterly. This is the amount from the first quarter. This sweeps those out of those budgets and puts them back in the unappropriated general fund. And like I sent everyone an email today, I know we do not like to add things at the last minute, but I wanted to get this to you guys so that we could discuss it in committee and then at least have until next quorum court. And then also, I believe this is in my mind kind of a housekeeping item, and at comptroller's request, he would like to not put it off another month, and that's why I asked you guys to do that. I appreciate your cooperation. Justice Ecke?
Motion to pass this on to the full quorum court with the due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Lyons. Any further discussion? Public comments? I have a motion to pass item number 25 to the full, oh, I'm so sorry. Justice Koger?
Well, so I sent an email this afternoon, and I have not checked my response. Maybe you answered it, but for the jail operations, almost 600,000, can you help me understand that? Are those positions that weren't filled? Is that?
That is correct. That's the unfortunate reality of what we face in the detention center. Major Denzer, if you want to, if I've misrepresented that, or if you want to add anything.
That's just in detention department that we're 30 down? Okay. Okay, that's all I have.
Is that good?
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Any further discussion? Public comments? Correct. I have a motion to pass item number 25 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Seki, a second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item number 25 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Before we move forward, okay, sorry, Justice Simons?
Thank you, Chair. I make a motion that we add items 8, 9, 10, and 13 through 25 onto a consent agenda.
I have a motion that we pass items 8, 9, 10, and then the remainder of items 13 through 25 to the consent agenda. Justice Hires?
Yeah, thank you, Judge. I'd like to just mention that I think that we should maybe pull 20 off, not because there's any issues with it, but because I think the public that comes on our regular meetings might like to hear about that. So I'd like to pull 20 off of that consent agenda.
Justice Simons, would you consider that a friendly amendment? Ms. Collins, did we get that clear? I think every item with the exception of item number 20. All those in favor? Those opposed? Those items will move to the consent agenda. The last item on our agenda is a public comment period. We have a 12-minute public comment period limited to 3 minutes per person. Public comments? Seeing none, we'll be adjourned.